What's up, guys? Welcome to another Dacetacular Mind. Now, I know I've been out of pocket for a few weeks now, but I really wanted to compile a list of topics that were worthwhile to talk about. And until I was able to formulate that list, as well as make sure it was going to be consistent going forward, I figured it was better to pump the brakes, not force anything, and then regroup and start working on the project again. This whole podcast, the concept behind it is to be more me rather than more than the character. So for it to come off real, honestly, if there's a time where I need to pause, think of some topics, and take a week or two off, it's best I do that to get a more genuine product out the next time I release a podcast. Whereas playing the Dace Man or doing the Dace Man show or doing Jersey Bullies or Potter Nerd, there's content there and a character to be played where it makes the episodes easier to do even if you're not feeling the episode. With this, I want it to be a thoughtful discussion as well as meaningful topics, both from experiences in my life as well as just what's going on in the world and maybe offering my opinion. Not that you asked for it, not that people want to hear it, but it's there to be said. So on today's episode, I thought an interesting topic would be empathy. And it's interesting to me about the whole concept of empathy because it's lacking so much these days that if you were able to master the ideology and the practice of empathy on a consistent basis, you probably win life if life was a game. Empathy is the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and feel emotion based off that, where it could dictate how you react. Now, I know there was a good, actually, practicing empathy on a personal level has been difficult for me per se, and I've tried to do that more so in recent years. But I know that I had a little, so it's hard to explain. I had empathy. I acknowledged the situations, and then I just chose to react the opposite way. And I feel that most people do that. I think every single person has the ability to conceptually understand what another person's going through, and then the decision to not make it easier on said person is where the problem lies. So that's why I thought it'd be interesting to talk about empathy today. Talking about empathy hopefully will help others practice it better. So it's the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. If you look from 2016 to now, and I'm not saying 2016 was a starting point, I think 2016 was a harsh exposure of the lack of empathy across, maybe our country, maybe the world, but it's very prevalent because things are being dictated these days because either you're red or blue. I talked about politics in a previous Dacetacular Mind episode, and I think the lack of empathy is what drives such passion on the other two sides. Common goal, I think, is if you talk to both sides and the majority that make up those parties, not the elite that actually represent the party or the unions or financiers that back said parties, but listen to the people who actually go out and vote and are the constituents and actually represent the ballots that happen at the elections. They have the core problems across the board. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, doesn't matter your beliefs, doesn't matter your sexuality, your gender, it doesn't matter any of that. The core thing is everybody feels that somebody else is getting something more than them undeservedly. And that's a core underlying problem for everybody. Some people believe it that maybe shouldn't believe it. Some people believe it, and there's varying degrees of the truth behind it. But ultimately, I feel that when people lash out and you see those negative opinions out there and those negative social media posts, or well, essentially social media posts because somebody recorded you and put it on there. It's them lashing out because they feel that they're not being done justice. So in order for them to seek justice, they have to tear somebody else down, and to me, that's the lack of empathy. To sit there, for example, to have a movement called Black Lives Matter, and then to yell at that person, all lives matter, is a prominent display and example of lack of empathy. Now, I say that because, yeah, all lives matter. No shit. The problem is that historically, black lives have been more expendable and unjustly recognized in the history of America, which is a very short history considering the other countries that have developed in the world. And you're not helping the situation. You're not helping yourself. You're not helping the person who's saying Black Lives Matter by yelling at them all lives matter. I think fundamentally everybody understands life matters. It's the greatest gift you're given. And honestly, nobody wants to waste it. But in the scenario that's been happening in the past few years, where this movement has happened, and even more so than the last few years, this has been an ongoing issue since, somebody said, hey, I think it's a good idea to make that person my lifetime worker without pay. I mean, the asshole who decided that hundreds and hundreds of years ago caused problems that we're dealing with today, because at that point that person said the person that I am making my slave or forcing to work with me with no pay is a lesser value than my life, when again everybody fundamentally can agree all lives matter. But at that point you have breached and branched off into a world where you said a certain life, given skin color, gender, whatever the case may be, religious belief, is lesser than mine, the guy who said, hey, I own you. And that's where the problem lies. So here we have the movement where we're saying, hey, Black Lives Matter. It's because of that moment in the past where we'll say white people, or just any slave owner, because it's happened in several cultures, but specifically in America, it's definitely a white versus African American thing. You valued your life more than theirs by saying, hey, I own you. And that's the fallout we're dealing with now. Now, personally, I've never owned slaves. Nobody could have in this country for the last 250 plus years or whatever it may be. But stuff stems from that. And the stuff that stems from that is like, okay, we don't own slaves anymore, but we're going to put laws into place to kind of like, hey, still limit you. We're saying all men are created equal, but you're not really created equal. And I think to tie it back to the empathy level, here we are removed 150 years, again, from decisions that were made by people who are not us, or are not of our generation, that rippled out to the generations after them, which there are people alive today who dealt with these repercussions from a century and a half ago. Because it's not that long ago that, hell, it's under 100 years from women got the right to vote. It's under 100 years from the Holocaust. It's 100 years from all the civil rights movements that happened in the 50s and 60s. It's crazy. That's within 100 years, and that's people are alive today that lived through those times. So to sit there and not wear the empathy shoes in this scenario and yell at somebody that all lives matter as they're trying to convey Black Lives Matter is just, it's a lack of empathy, a lack of understanding. Yeah, dude, all lives matter, but in this particular instance, with the highest rates of violence against African Americans, still feeling oppression from civil rights and feeling oppression from even slavery, which again, over 150 years ago, still has rippling effects to this date, you're not taking a moment to go, you know what? They're going through some shit. It's not fair. The system is not fairly stacked in favor to help everybody equally. And realistically, by you yelling all lives matter, how does that help? Like, that doesn't help shit. You're just muddying the waters for real change. And I know that's a very deep and heavy load to talk about when it comes to empathy, but I think it's the prime example. Like, that's something that everybody can understand, because everybody has seen this movement in the past 5-10 years, and at the same time know somebody who, or seen some social media posts, because you have a generational gap where they say all lives matter, or maybe if you worked harder, or if you did this differently. Like, they try to offer some kind of insight of, like, if you did this, then you wouldn't experience that, when in actuality, back to empathy, if you understood the situation, there's nothing they can do. There was things built into the system to, pardon my French, fuck them over from the get-go that you can't get out of it. Now, I'm not saying that they have, like, the person who's yelling all lives matter doesn't have their own shit. I'm just saying you have to use empathy. You have to practice empathy. Yeah, I'm going through my own shit, but that person over there is going through their own shit too. And by me throwing more shit at them, how does that help? You know what I'm saying? And it's a very sensitive and touchy topic, and I just feel that if people took a moment to just empathetically think, how does this help others, life be a little bit easier. Now, another example is this damn pandemic we've been stuck in. I personally am not a fan of the vaccine. I don't like the fact that it hasn't officially been approved yet. It's currently still in that emergency state usage. I got it. I didn't think I needed to get it, and my reasoning behind me not thinking that I needed to get it was, I know I've been exposed to it. I had to go into certain areas during certain times that had a higher infection rate, and I know people who have had it, and I've been in contact with people who have had it, and luckily for me, and this is just, I'm super lucky because I know there have been people who have not been as lucky, asymptomatic. I think I had a slight cough, and that could also be chalked up to me being fat. So, to me, the vaccine helps diminish the symptoms of this virus. I think it's been stated several times that it doesn't really slow down the transmission, but it definitely squashes the symptoms you experience, which then makes it to how I experienced it, where you're pretty much asymptomatic and you're cruising along. Now, the problem is, without more people getting this vaccine and making it asymptomatic, it's giving time for the virus to kind of morph, and, we've got the Delta variant now. I get that. Viruses mutate all the time. It's why you get a flu shot annually, and it has, like, here's what we think the 20 or so strains could be this year. Best of luck. See you on your way. But I still got it. I will be passionate about, I do not like masks. I hate them. They're irritating. Mine get moist for whatever reason, or should I use the word wet? I apologize for the word moist. I don't care for it at all because it does make it a bit harder to breathe for me. I had to actively train groups of people while wearing a mask, and by the end of the day, that thing was soaked. I found it harder to breathe in between the courses as I was delivering the courses because I would speak up to 30 minutes to an hour with a mask on. It was wet. It would stick to my face. And it just ultimately was like, it made it harder to take those deep breaths, to center myself, and I felt that I rushed through stuff and things like that. So honestly, when it comes to the mask conversation, I hate them. I despise wearing masks, but I do it. I'm not a fan of being vaccinated and having to wear masks, but I also understand the complications of trying to dictate who has it versus who doesn't have it. Since I also believe that you shouldn't have to show your vaccine cards. Like it's such a catch-22, and this is where it stems back to empathy, where I don't like most of what's going on. I feel like actually, I don't have to feel it. I know it. The entire world does not like what's going on. If somebody sits there and says they like the pandemic, they're assholes. I jokingly say I like the social distancing because personally I like my own space. I was door dashing before the pandemic. I enjoy working from home. Those are perks, but end of the day, life stopping as we knew it 2019 and before has been awful all around. I mean, this podcast stemmed from that because there's a lot of psychological impacts that you're not realizing when you're just secluded from people as much as you might like doing it. Like, I don't like being out all the time, but it's a hell of an impact. So empathetically, to keep the country open and to keep things going, if they're going to tell me to wear a mask even though I'm vaccinated, as much as I hate it, yeah, I'm going to do it. And this is where the empathetic path or thought process should come into play. Do I care about spreading this virus to people who don't want it just to not want it? It's like it's the cool thing to do, or they're making it a political thing, or they're saying, you know what, my body, my choice, which ironically they'll yell at you that abortion's wrong. No, I don't care if they get it. But on the same coin, I do care because now you have a lot of people who are doing the right thing who might be working in that hospital that have to now treat them, and now the hospital's at max capacity, and now they're stressing out, and now they're dealing with things, and their life has become complicated because of, again, lack of empathy. This group of people who said, I'm not getting it. I don't care. And to the point, I probably would not have gotten it if I wasn't offered Phillies tickets and a bobblehead and some hot dogs and sodas. But if it was push come to shove of like, hey, you need to get it, or the way life is now is the way life's going to be going forward, I would have gotten stuck. The Phillies did an amazing thing by having the vaccine night. It was easy. It was there. They gave me some stuff. It was a perfect scenario for me to get stuck. I understand why some people won't. I know people who are not confident in the ingredients that reside in some of these vaccines on how they'll react with them personally. I mean, there's a vaccine that you get as a kid that I actually couldn't have part of it because I was allergic to it and it would kill me. So that's something I understand when it comes to the vaccine. But I also believe that group is a small group compared to the larger group that's unvaccinated or unvaccinated. And their excuse of not getting it kind of irks me. Because I took it. I took the J&J one. I'm overweight. I probably ran in kind of higher risk with the J&J because of seeing all the stuff that was happening with it prior to getting it. Still got it. Got stuck. Had a rough day afterwards, but was back on my feet 2 days later. to sit there and say, I'm not getting it because it's part of the liberal agenda, or because they're makes me magnetic, or they're tracking me, or whatever. I can't understand. And back to empathy. I can't put myself in your shoes because I don't get it. I have this hard time with religion as well. Just personally being of, leave me alone, I leave you alone, life's great. But to have that mindset and to know that you can contract this disease, know that you could spread it very easily because the Delta apparently has a higher transmission rate, and see the numbers where it's like one person out of every 50 admitted to the hospital was vaccinated. And that one person, they weren't even there long. It was just, they went in for like a different issue and just happened to have it, or like they're not put on ventilators. It's a rare occurrence for someone who's vaccinated to end up on a ventilator, whereas the majority of the cases are the ones who are just digging their feet in the ground and not getting the vaccine. I don't know how you can take a stance, and I'll give credit where credit's due. More and more people seem to be getting vaccinated now when they realize, like, oh shit, this is like, it's kicking into another gear, and now states aren't messing around. We're going to start rolling back to what we were before reopening. But to sit there and take that stance, even if you're asymptomatic. So I think that's probably the people I have the biggest problem with, and who are practicing the least amount of empathy, because I fell in that group. This COVID came out 2019. Impacted us from March 2020 to today. And not once did I get put on my ass from the virus itself. So I would have fallen into that group of asymptomatic COVID people. I still got the shot. I didn't get it when it first came out. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to play that game like, hey, I ran to the front of the line. I played a wait and see approach. Because I was asymptomatic, I felt it more important that other people get it first. When I was told, hey, you're going to start going on the road and training people and being in closed rooms and interacting with people again rather than working from home like I had been doing for the entire pandemic up to that point, yeah, I started thinking to myself, you know what, now I'm putting others potentially at risk. Let me get it. And let me be prepared, because now I'm entering back into the population. So when it first came out, I did take the stance of, I'm not getting it. I was asymptomatic, who cares, et cetera, et cetera. But when I was told that I was going back into the workforce and traveling again, it was like, okay, now I'm crossing state borders. Now I'm dealing with groups of people. I should get it. Safe than sorry. And honestly, I was rewarded for it. I got Phillies tickets. I got the hot dogs. I got the sodas. I got the bobblehead. I have the ability to go to any game I want without a mask now. I can go into indoor events without masks. Like, I got the free pass of, like, hey, you got vaccinated. Welcome back to the 2019 and before era. Now they're pushing the masks again, and I'm a little upset, because it comes down to the fact that not everybody took the same stance I did with the empathy piece of it, of saying, hey, yeah, I don't need it. Yeah, I'm asymptomatic, but, this is going to impact others. And now it is impacting others, because the responsibility levels weren't there of other people. We now have to go back to masks. I'll call it now. I feel like after November 5th, specifically, whenever the election is for the governor of New Jersey, I do think we're going to start rolling back into lockdowns. I do think we all reacted too late. I personally probably reacted too late as well, considering I didn't get it until end of June. No, that's not true. I got it at the end of May. God, I can't believe we're almost into 2022. And it was because of the lack of empathy I had done. Point blank. And I started this episode by saying, if you could master empathy, you win the game of life. And the two examples I just used, given the tensions of racial issues in America and the tensions of this pandemic are prime examples. If you practiced a little bit of empathy on the two subjects that I touched base on in this episode, if everybody did that, everybody took a little bit of empathy and just thought, like, Jesus, how does that person across the field who has opposite views of me feel? There's got to be a common ground. There's got to be a way to make it easier for everybody. And nobody practices that. Nobody, like, empathy, everybody understands it. Everybody knows what it is. Everybody knows you should do it. It's the goddamn golden rule you're taught as a kid. Do unto others as you want done to you. Like, treat people with respect. Just be empathetic a little bit. I challenge anyone who listens to this, the very few people that do. I'm not even going to pretend like hundreds of people listen to this episode. I'm not even going to pretend that people got this far into the episode because white boy from Jersey talking about Black Lives Matter is probably warranted to just turn off the damn podcast at that point. But I challenge this week. You will come across a situation. Might not be huge. Might be small. Could be huge. Whatever the case may be. You will come into a disagreement with somebody this week. Between this episode and the next episode I drop. I challenge you, before doing what so many people do, doing what I do all the fucking time, and that is speak before you think. Think. Process what was said to you. Process the other side. And empathetically think, what if that was me? I have been trying my damnedest since I had the wake-up call in what I call my Nexus event that we coined from the Loki show, to do that. I try. I'm not perfect at it. I won't be perfect at it. I'm not going to win the game of life when it comes to empathy. I know that there are occasions, many in the past, still some today, where I choose the route to be a jerk rather than empathetic. And, most of them probably deal with Gibby. But I dig my feet in rather than actually thinking to myself, does it matter? I think that's a big question to ask yourself before you jump down a hole where you're arguing with somebody. And B, how do they feel? What are they dealing with that has gotten to them to that point of view? And you may start taking some understanding to that point of view after hearing it and taking a second to think about it, rather than firing back some retort that validates your feelings over theirs. Again, no one's perfect. No one's going to be able to do this. Nobody's going to, on a 100% basis. If you did, you probably are going to be talked about over centuries as like a mythos of Mother Teresa and Gandhi standards. And even them probably didn't practice empathy all the time. They probably said, fuck it, I want my McChicken sandwich. This guy can wait a second. It's fine. Because if you practice empathy all the time, sometimes you start, losing yourself. But I challenge you that this week, you're going to come across a situation where you're in a disagreement with somebody, or you're in a conversation, you have an opposite view of that person, to just kind of use empathy. Listen to them. That's a key thing. Listen, process, and before you fire off your rebuttal, practice that. I guarantee, because you're not going to, if that other person's not practicing the empathy like you are, you're not going to break through them. You're not going to change their mind. Most people are set in their ways, and when you get into a heated debate, or even something that's a fundamental building block of a person's personality, you're not going to change that through, you know what, I understand what you're saying. However, that'll probably just set them off even more. But I guarantee you, if you take that moment to consider the other side, consider the other person's feelings, and consider how they feel, you will ultimately walk out of that discussion, argument, debate, whatever it may be, feeling better. You may not, again, you're not going to change that person's views. You may not solve all the world's problems, but you'll feel a little bit better because you had a moment of personal growth. I have. Several times I have gone through conversations and I have tried to understand the other side, and ultimately it changes my reaction, which was very blunt, brash, and mean in the past, to come out softer. Still try to assert my side of this the conversation, but at the same time, I don't feel there is a weird sense. You don't feel victory after arguing with somebody. You usually feel kind of shame in a way. You don't feel that if you legitimately take an empathetic view on their opinion. And that's my challenge to you. Again, if you're still listening after me, a white boy from New Jersey who talked about Black Lives Matter, and a non-medical expert talking about COVID, have stuck around this far, and you take up the challenge, kudos. Thank you so much for hanging around. And see, you don't have to thank me, but thank yourself, because at that point, it does feel better. I can tell you right now, by practicing empathy more in the relationship than I currently am in, I have had better outcomes than in the past when I did not practice empathy at all or well enough. The outcomes of those arguments were not pretty, and the outcome of that entire thing was unfortunately not pretty. But using empathy and trying to understand the other person you interact with helped a lot of the relationships I have today. And in some instances, lack of empathy has destroyed relationships I used to have that I no longer have today. So, using this entire platform as being the tested tale of time and learn from my mistakes, there you have it. Empathy in a nutshell. If the world practiced it more, it'd be a slightly better place to live. I mean, there's plenty of events we talk about. I talked about two prime incidents in America today, racial tensions, this pandemic. Hell, there's the entire Afghanistan situation that you could apply this to. A lot of people are just like, nah, leave them, get out. I mean, for 20 years you have hearing everybody say, get out of the damn country. And we pull out and everybody's like, oh, you're a monster. You've been saying for 20 years to get out. And then you're saying to leave the people there. Or you're saying, like, I wouldn't want to be in any decision-making shoes right now about what happened over there. You're dealing with the decisions of a guy who was president 20 years ago, who went in there for a reason. After concluding the reason from a guy who was there, was it 2012 they finally got him? Almost 10, 11 years after the incident that put us there. And now you're the fourth guy in line that has to deal with it. This is all, to me, this is all their faults. Unfortunately, the fourth guy is the last guy, and the last guy is the guy that's in sight, and he's going to get all the heat for it. Even though he had the minimal interaction with it. It wasn't his deal to pull out. He agreed that we had to pull out. Everybody agreed we had to pull out. But, I think it's a hard situation. I wouldn't even want to express to one side or the other on it, because I don't know. I'm not in that position. I'm not a military leader. I'm not a humanitarian. I'm not anything involved with what's going on over there. But I know it's a shitty situation, and a lot of people have their neck on the line right now because of what happened over there, because of what happened in the past 20 years. And all you can do is just feel for them. Like, I don't even know how you could help. But I urge people, in the theme of today's episode, just be empathetic about it. Don't use the phrase of leave them. Don't let them in my country. You shouldn't, it's their country, let them deal with it. be empathetic, because who knows how history will write itself in the next 20 years. Especially in our country that is clearly at a breaking point. Well, after that deep episode, I'm going to call it quits for Dacetacular Mind today. We'll be back next week. I guarantee it. I guarantee. I'm not doing this week off stuff anymore. I have a list of topics I want to talk about. And empathy was a key one that I wanted to kick it back off with, because it's a heavy subject. It's something I think everybody needs to practice a little bit more. You probably practice it a bit today. You may practice it, but still take the opposite direction. Challenge yourself. Approach situations a little bit more tactfully. If there's one person in mind, Gibby, you need to practice it the most. I practice it with you, damn it. You practice it with me. Just empathy, man. Empathy, empathy, empathy. And that's the word of the day, the word of the week, the word of the year, the word of the fucking century. Practice it. It will make life so much easier if you legitimately try to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. We'll be back next week with a Dacetacular Mind here in Basement Protocol Productions. I enjoy having these conversations. I enjoy getting it out there. I don't know how much you enjoy it. Again, I made the joke twice. I'll make it a third time. If you made it to this point after listening to a white boy from New Jersey talk about the Black Lives Matter movement, thank you. And if you listened to it and I offended anyone, I am so sorry. I don't know what I don't know. I can't feel what I never felt. And I'm just trying to talk. And hopefully these ramblings of a madman reach somebody, changes somebody maybe a little bit, or you learn from my stupidity, because I have lots of it. We talked about empathy today. I was the least empathetic motherfucker up until my Nexus event. And every day after that I've tried to practice these things I talk about or share these experiences that I have, it's making me better. Some people might not see it. Sometimes I don't see it. But I know in the long run, there's a positive effect for it. And that's why I share here on a Dacetacular Mind. Head over to facebook.com/Basement Protocol Productions, where you can catch all of our projects. I know I said I wasn't going to promote too much stuff here, but I'm very excited because Basement Protocol is actually firing back up. And a lot of things are coming back with Season 2. There's a big push for new projects. And the core people, the group of people that work together at BPP are some of the most creative minds I've ever dealt with, motivated people I've ever dealt with, and entertaining people I've ever dealt with the exception of Gibby. He's just very, he will do what you ask him to do. He's a trooper. No, but he's building a Dungeons & Dragons campaign, so we're going to see how his creativity is going. So I urge you, if you see anything out there from Basement Protocol Productions, please like it, please share it, please retweet it. Do what you can to help get us out there, because, again, these are very entertaining people who have a lot of opinions and are nerds and just sports fans and love the things they talk about and do, and that's why they do it. If they're performing to an audience of 5 to 10, they still do it, but they deserve an audience of thousands because their opinions are interesting. They talk coherently, more so than I do. And they're definitely worth a listen, definitely worth a watch. So Basement Protocol Productions over on Facebook.com, and they also have their own website at basementprotocolproductions.com. That's been Dacetacular Mind. I'm glad I'm back. I'm glad I let you in. And I look forward to having one of our Monday fireside chats here on wherever you listen to podcasts. And until next time, guys, when I let you into a Dacetacular Mind, basement dwellers, stick to the protocol. Later.